set this to record. Welcome again. I will be going back and forth these slides. So these slides are about compensation, about incentives to increase effort by employees in a company, and I have some slides on risk sharing. But perhaps in order to answer some questions that the students have been posting, I will be starting by promotion tournaments and the discussion of why does it make sense for companies to incentivize promotions. So let me just get this going. I'll come back here to risk sharing in oops. Okay. So we know that for many firms, or for many jobs in general, firms can improve on the explicit incentive contracts by using implicit incentive contracts. So this is something we saw some weeks ago. Remember the differences between explicit and implicit contract clauses. So explicit contract clauses are those that are written down in the text of the contract, where you will work, for how long per week will you work, or how many hours per day you will work, how much you will earn, of course, what is going to be your role and responsibilities, the duration of the contract, etc. These are all explicit contract clauses. But there are also implicit contract clauses, and these are equally important. So I gave you at the time, if I remember correctly, a fairly anecdotal example, which was it's implicit in the contract that if you are going to work, say, as a consultant or as a lawyer or an investment banker, you cannot show up to your client's office in swimming trunks and flip-flops. This is true. This is an implicit clause, contract clause, but perhaps it would be more useful to refer now to a different type of implicit contract clauses. One implicit contract clause that most contracts have is that if you work hard, you will have a chance to rise in the company, to improve your situation. In other words, you'll have a chance to be promoted. I can think of next to zero contracts that have written in them any clause, explicitly any clause, saying that you're going to be promoted, or even if you are either going to be promoted or you're going to be fired. So even companies that have the up or out policy will seldom, or to the best of my knowledge, will not explicit that in the contract. But it is implicit there, and we know that some companies are companies that are seen this way. Some potential employers are seen as employers that tend to promote, sorry for the redundancy, promotions from the inside. They tend to prize their employees and make them grow over time in their career. This is an example of an implicit contract clause. This is particularly well suited for environments where observable performance measures are either noisy, that is, the effort of the employee and the results obtained by the employee may be difficult to disentangle. So I don't know if this employee is turning extremely good results because he's lucky, because he's competent, or a combination of both. When the measures reward activities that the firm do not want workers to pursue, or fail to reward activities that the firm wants workers to pursue. Let me discuss these two in more detail. So we have situations, particularly when we have variable compensation schemes, where we are not only fostering the effort of employees, but sometimes we are also fostering the competition between employees. And the competition between employees may generate another agency problem. Here, the agency problem is that employees are putting a lot of effort to increase their own sales commission, say, but that is not increasing the overall sales commission of the company. Let me give you an example. Imagine a company that has sales representatives for any kind of product, let's say for some cosmetic product. And each of these sales representatives has a geographical region where they can operate. This is not strictly speaking a defined map, but you're saying you are going to operate in Lisbon, that person is going to operate north of Lisbon, that person south, etc. One fine day, and we are paying our agents a commission-based component, depending on their sales turnover. One fine day, the representative that operates in, say, the northern Lisbon area gets in touch with a potential client that, however, operates in the southern or in the central Lisbon area. He strikes a deal, doesn't want to call upon his friend to tell or his colleague to tell anything, gets the commission, and that's it. This employee is increasing his wage because he's making an extra sale. His colleague is reducing his wage because he's losing that sale. The company as a whole is not changing in any way its turnover. So in this case, our commissions-based pay did not really incentivize actions that we as the company want to pursue. It's not directly hurting the company, but it's not benefiting the company. It's not benefiting the company either, because the incentive for this agent is simply to maximize how much he or she can make in these commissions. So this is again another reason for us to use different types of incentives. So when these performance measures are noisy, or when they are driving actions by our agents that may not be directed towards the most value creation for the company. Okay, so in these situations, we tend to think that promotions are a good way to regulate the effort and again to align the objectives of the principals and the agents. So these promotions tend to be implicit contract clauses. They allow companies to use performance measures that many times cannot be verified by external mechanisms. So promotions tend to be slightly more opaque or subjective than simple sales commissions, but with some benefits. So let's now look at this from the side of the company. Why does it pay off for companies to have promotions? Because, well, after all, it is an increase in costs for the company. So what does it pay off for the side of the employer? Notice that when a company announces, just say the company explicitly announces a promotion or the possibility for promotion of about 10% of their employees, this is likely going to induce higher levels of effort, not only for those 10% that are going to be promoted, but instead this is going to increase the level of efforts for all employees or for most employees in a company. Francisco, you are anticipating what I have in 2 slides from now. Yes, you are anticipating that. So, but let's put the bad side for the disadvantages out for a little bit before I go into those. For the time being here, what I want to highlight is, let me just then quickly move to this slide, which is they solve some problems. They also create some other. So first of all, they increase the effort level of many more employees than those that are needed to promote. So you are only giving a raise to 10% of the employees, but you are having, say, 50, 70, 80% of the employees working harder because they believe they have a chance at being promoted. They also serve the problem of supervisors who are unwilling to make sharp distinctions among employees. So perhaps a supervisor or a hierarchical superior is unwilling to say you get a 10% sales commission because 10% is what really makes you work harder. For this person, I have to give a 20% sales commission. So this is extremely impractical because it's perceived as unfair. If the person is doing the job at the same level as I am, just because that person is lazier and needs a bigger incentive to put the same amount of effort as I put, it isn't fair from my side. So it's unfair between employees, even though it generates from a company perspective is the option that generates most value. Promotions can help sort out this problem. A promotion is also an indivisible reward. That is, the incentives for those being promoted are going to be perceived by those being promoted. The incentives for those that don't want to be promoted, that are content with what they're doing right now, are therefore in place. This counteracts what? This counteracts the option of simply raising wages for everyone. So this overall raise in wages, so I'm just going to increase my employees' salaries by 2% to everyone. This is going to equally impact on the best employees and on the worst employees as well. There are also a relative form of performance evaluation. Those that are promoted have performed better, that those that weren't promoted didn't perform as well. And it creates a relative ranking between employees. And here the key is that this is a relative ranking. So this solves that problem. If, say, a company always promotes every year without exception its top 10 best employees at junior level, this means that this is true for a good year, this is true for an okay year, and this is true for a bad year as well. So even in, say, a recession, you're still going to promote the 10% best employees in that recession. So this creates a level playing field that solves the problem that your colleague was asking before. That is, in the case of a recession, or if there's a shock in demand for our industry, how can we solve this problem? There's a very good question I'm getting here privately. If the student doesn't mind, I'll share it, which is the Wells Fargo scandal, credit card scandal from, I think, 5 years ago. It was around 2015, perhaps a bit earlier already. So I'll just do a brief summary, because I think it's a worth mentioning case. So I think in around 2015, or perhaps a bit earlier, there was the discovery on media outlets. So there were news saying that Wells Fargo's employees. So Wells Fargo is a large lender in the U.S. They amongst other financial services, they provide their clients with credit cards. So you do an application for a credit card, and if your application is approved, you get that credit card with a given plafond to spend on a monthly basis. What happened? What happened was that Wells Fargo wanted to incentivize an increase in the providing of this service. They wanted more people to have credit cards. And in order to do that, they created an incentive scheme that said for each credit card approval, the employee that gave the credit card to the client will get, say, a certain bonus. The problem there was that there was little verification on the criteria, even on the process itself. And after a while, many employees started performing very well. The credit card service at Wells Fargo boomed. A lot of people were getting credit cards. the bank was extremely happy with this. With this strategy, with this compensation scheme. It was costing them, but the credit card numbers were skyrocketing. Until there were reports of many customers started complaining that they had gotten credit cards without asking for credit cards, for such credit cards. This at first was seen as perhaps incompetence, some computer mistakes or something like that. But after a while, the truth came to light. And what was the truth there? Was that the incentive scheme had a very serious design flaw. The bonus was given to the employee if the employee approved and sent the credit card to the client. There was very little verification, formal verification of the clients formally asking for the credit card. There were forms that weren't filled. There were forms that had no signature. There were forms that had fake signatures of the client that didn't correspond. There were many requests for cancellation of credit cards. And once the situation was audited and it was discovered what happened, basically what was happening is that employees were asking for credit cards for customers that didn't apply for those. After the approval was granted by themselves and they got the bonus, they would cancel the credit card by the customer, and the customers wouldn't even notice. Of course, as with any other human interaction, some of these employees forgot to cancel the credit cards that their customers didn't ask for, and the customers after a while would discover that they were being charged for a credit card annuity. And once they complained, the situation came to light and it was discovered that this was flawed. So the problem here was a problem with bad incentive design, and bad governance as well. So bad governance, bad compliance. The bad incentive design was that the incentive was given to credit cards approved, not say to credit cards say expenditures after, or approved but not cancelled. So there was no caveat. So long as the credit card was approved, the bonus was given to the employee. Perhaps it was too much of a simple scheme. And there were serious problems with compliance in the sense that there was no verification, no true verification of the problem. So it was an incentive scheme that went bad. So it's a good example of that. So, but it's an interesting question. I will just conclude then here because I have about 7 minutes left in the session. I will conclude with the disadvantages of the promotion tournaments that your colleague was asking about. So, summarizing the advantages of promotion is that if a promotion scheme is well designed, that is, if the chances of employees being promoted are large enough, and if the raise after the promotion is interesting enough for employees to put effort, we may get a very nice side effect, which is rather than getting more effort from 10% of employees, we get more effort from 50, 60, or 80% of the employees, because if everyone believes they are up for promotion, everyone is going to work harder. This is also an efficient measure for the company because you don't have to promote everyone, only a high enough portion of those that put that effort. What are then, and another advantage, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is that it is a relative performance measure that works in good times but also works in bad times. So in this sense, it's also very fair. Disadvantages. The first disadvantage was the one that your colleague mentioned in the chat before. So any type of relative performance evaluation is looking at an employee's performance and results compared to its peers. Not so much compared with the market, but compared with its peers. So these may generate situations in which you want to be the best of the best, but sadly, these may also generate situations where you want to be the least bad of the bad. And this is a situation that sometimes rises. So perhaps lack of cooperation is something that can arise in situations in which, or scenarios in which employees are up for promotion. So because I know that the top 10% are going to be promoted, I'll start being more individualistic when I should have been a team worker. Why? Because I don't want to share the credits of my work with my fellow employees, with my fellow colleagues. I can go, I can say, pass on a good tip that would increase the sales turnover of my company, but rather than passing on to a colleague, I may keep it for myself, even if I have little information I can do about it. Let me just give a brief example. Say you have again a geographical division for sales territories, and an agent in one territory knows of a customer, an existing client that is wanting to put a big order outside of this agent's territory. Because this information would not directly benefit this employee, perhaps this person will just simply not tell its colleague that this client is up in the market. In the worst case scenario, he may even do something to harm the chances of its colleagues, actively harm the chances of its colleagues being up for promotion, because in the end it is a relative measure. The other problem with promotions is the old adage that says, well, the best football player is not necessarily the best coach. If, say, being a coach is a promotion over being a footballer, then there are some chances that being the best at your current job doesn't make you the best at the job that gets the promotion. So you may be a terrific analyst, but a very poor manager. And this is something that promotion tournaments also don't solve. I have also here a question. Could a scheme like raising every employee's salary is a small percentage, then promoting 10% of the highest performer, solve some of the disadvantages? This is an interesting question. Let me think a little bit about it. So you're raising everybody's salaries a bit. So raising salaries increases overall productivity. And it is a relative measure, but it is inside the company, but it is also an absolute measure for the market. I have to think a little bit about your question. Okay, it's a very interesting question, and I want to think a little bit about it. So, because I'm running out of time, I'll just conclude with a summary of this slide. So, the two big disadvantages of promotion tournaments is because promotions are a relative, assess the relative performance of employees. They can spur the best behaviors in all, so everyone is doing their best, or they can spur uncooperative behavior between the employees, particularly in situations in which the market is fairly stale, so the external market is fairly stale. The other situation is that there are no guarantees that a person doing a good job at a lower level, hierarchical level of the organization, is going to be doing an equally good job at the higher level in an organization. This second point can be solved with, say, promotions that imply, say, higher wages, but not necessarily different responsibilities. But it is still a risk. And because I'm running out of time, I'll stop here. I'll start another session just to clarify any questions, okay? If not, I'll see you next Tuesday, hopefully already with the camera back on, okay? Have a great end of the week. Bye-bye.